It is located on the Israel-Lebanese border. You can see the line of the border in yellow line. That's the road very close to the border, that's right. And it's very close to a very large site in Lebanon, which is a tell called Tel Khirbet, which carries also a Hellenistic period pottery. That we know not because I was there, but because it was surveyed by Frankel and Finkelstein in the first Lebanese war. And me. You were there?
I was there, yeah.
Oh, see? So we have an eyewitness. And the second site is Keren Naphtali, which lies very close to Kadesh. We'll focus first on esh-Shuhara. It's a small, very small salvage excavation. And let's see the sites big, all from the short report that we published at Eretz Tzafon in Hebrew. We speak here about area A, which includes about 2 squares. The site is a very small site, according to what we know from pottery in the area. It is a very small site, maybe 100 meters, probably even less. And it was on the side of the road and cut by a electricity and telephone wires. That's why we made a small salvage excavation. What you see here in area A are 2 rooms and part of 2 other rooms. The room in the center of the photo is courtyard 1, as it's called in Hebrew, on the plan, on the right side of the plan, top plan. You can see 2 taboons in the courtyard and paved. And in the courtyard, we had 2 layers of ash. The second room to the left, courtyard, room 1, room 2, as 2 bases for pillars in its center. And there were as well layers of ash. Below it were evidence from the Persian period. And there were a large assemblage of pottery that we'll see later on. Move to the second slide, we'll see some photos of the remains of the architecture preserved. You can see to 1.5 meters, or some places even to 2 meters high. In 1 or 2 places we had the lintels of the small doorways to the other rooms. And as a matter of fact, it's a site that could build much more than from these little 2 squares that we dug over there. Next one. And the pottery here, we have only 3 out of the 5 tables that we published. It is very clear that we have here later phases of the Hellenistic period, the 2nd century BC on the right and on the left. And in the middle we had at least almost complete of the type we call the GCW, Galilean courseware. It was on the floor of the northernmost room, of which only a small part was excavated. Next one. And the 2 arrowheads on the right side were discovered in the room. Yes, I think it's in the room. And the left one, the spear head, which is iron, was found in the other square. We have, let's see if I have another one. No, that's the second site, okay. So we have here only small part of what we assume is a farmstead, not even a small village, farmstead not far away from the main site of the Hellenistic period there, at Tel El Khirbet. There is a nice assemblage of coins that Danny will discuss them after me. And our conclusion was that what we have here is the last phase, the last line, phase, the last layer of ash. We suggested that it belongs to the phase or the time of which Galilee was conquered or became part of the Hasmonean kingdom, and it was probably maybe during the time of Janus or maybe a little bit later, but we suggest that the place was conquered, maybe even abandoned, and what is left there could be some kind of a garrison that belonged to the Hasmonean kingdom. We don't have a new living phase at the site, only the last ash from which the arrowheads and Hasmonean coins came, and therefore for us it was maybe the both of the suggestion that there was a garrison there, not people that are living at the site. But remember that we got only one square at the area B, only 3 squares of the site, and therefore everything that we conclude, of course, comes from a very small dig. I will continue into the next slide because it is connected, in my opinion, and this is, of course, Keren Naphtali, not Keren, but Keren, like a horn. And what you see here two views, one looking west from the Hula Valley, that's a different in altitude of about 500 meters between the valley and the top of the mountain, of the hill. Looking east, the site is about 80 meters above the surface, but it is with very steep slopes. On the top of it, there is a fortress that we excavated in small excavations, but not salvage excavations, in 1999, I think, or 1998. Next one. This is the top plan of the fortress with the excavated areas, 3 excavation areas. The area that yielded the most important part is on the right, on the northern edge of the, the right, this one. It yielded the layers. Next. There are three layers, the Hellenistic 3rd, 2nd century BC, then late Hellenistic, what we suggest Hasmonean 2nd century BC, and after that an early Roman 1st century BC. The last one, of course, will help us only to understand that the site was abandoned after this period. It all came from the from this area that you can see here, some kind of a building with pilasters supporting the wall, and we dug it to bedrock. Next. But the interesting discovery that made us aware to the importance of the site is the mikveh, which was built or installed into one of the rooms of the fortress. The fortress is, no doubt, Hellenistic and connected very clear to the center at Kedesh. It guards, high connection with Kedesh, guards the main road ascending from the Hula Valley to Kedesh, and also controls the road at the bottom in the Chula Valley, and you can see that on the western side there are 3 rooms in a line. These 3 rooms, 2.5, you can see them, and into the northernmost one, a mikveh was installed. The floor of the room was dug and cut into bedrock, and walls were built around it, and steps. And the reason, of course, is that if they dug a secondary used the room and dug down and cut the stone, the rock deeper, the original walls of the room will collapse. Therefore, they surrounded it with a form. Okay. כן, אוקיי, אז לא, רק תראה את הקירות שבפנים, כן? These are 4 walls that were in the second phase were added into this room, and there's no doubt in Jericho and other places. Therefore, we can say, I think very clear that this Hellenistic fortress was conquered, taken by Hasmonean forces, and there is no settlement there. There is a fortress in the Hasmonean period, and therefore this belongs to the Hasmonean garrison. We don't have a lot of Hasmonean finds at the site, but the fact that it was filled up with early Roman pottery tells us that it was in use during the Hasmonean period, but out of use in the early Herodian period. I suggested 38 BC. So if we try now to do next at the 2 sites, at Keren Khalil we have a clear administrative military installation of the Hellenistic it was taken, and a change went through the fortress by adding a mikveh. And now we go to esh-Shuhara. We have, as we said, 2 phases of ash, but the upper one, the uppermost, yielded the Hasmonean coins and the 2 arrowheads. And of course, we as archaeologists sometimes we use ash as evidence for destruction, but not always it should be a military, it should be a battle, not always it should be violent, it could be for many other reasons, but in this case we have 2 arrowheads that maybe add to some kind of a violent act that destroyed the site. We don't have enough material to prove that the garrison was hit because it's only 2 squares. But if the Maccabean project is looking for a site to check many other theories, that could be the appropriate site. That's my review of these 2 digs and the base for the discussion. Okay, so that's only to show you the Herodian siege complex around the fortress at Keren Khalil, just to show you how the end came to the site. After the 1st century BC, there was nothing on this fortress. Okay, that's my review of these 2 excavations. And of course, sorry. Now, clear evidence for Hasmonean connections between Galilee and Judea came last summer. I think it is for the first time that we have on hand, as you can see here, a Hasmonean pinched oil lamp, which is very typical to Hasmonean Judea. But I can't recall to any complete, maybe a few pieces even there that came to life during the excavation of the late Hellenistic period. That came from Shechin. We checked the related petrography for this piece, and it was made in Galilee. It was made in probably at Shechin, and therefore we have some kind of a group of people who came with the knowledge of pinched oil lamps from Judea and producing pinched oil lamps in Galilee for a short time until it completely disappeared. But we have to remind everyone that we miss, that's the last one, yes, that we miss Hasmonean pottery in Galilee. Something because we can clearly see we have some kind of a continuation between late Hellenistic period into the Hasmonean and early Roman period, and not like in Judea, we don't have very clear types of pottery that we can find them on surface and get it as much. That's it.
Okay, over to me. Andrew, can you please change the presentation? How am I coming across? Can you all hear me well?
Danny, it would be good if the volume was a little lower at your end, because we're getting some...
Lower volume?
Yeah, that might be a little bit better. Sylvie, how's it for you guys? Is it still difficult to hear?
Now? Is it better now? Is it okay, the volume? Yeah?
Right.
Okay, until...
The other one, SIT, is we're recording it back in our office. Oh, sorry, which one?
Okay, can I go ahead?
Okay, and are we supposed to put Danny's PowerPoint on here?
Yeah, I guess I'll put it
Okay, until the presentation comes on.
Danny, I can't hear you at the moment. Hold on.
Cannot hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Anyone? No comment? Too close to the microphone. Is it now? Is it better now?
Ah, okay.
Okay?
You're on.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to talk until I hear otherwise.
Say the microphone dropped.
Danny, stop, because your mic, can you hear us? Your microphone dropped off somehow. We need to...
You can't hear me because I'm not speaking. How is it now? Can you hear me?
Now it's happening.
I'm not on mute. I'm not on mute.
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Danny,
I
can you hear us? Because we can't hear you.
Cannot hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh. Yes, and it looks
No, my video is fine.
Your video is frozen? And we can't hear you.
I can hear you. And the video is not frozen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, hello.
Wave your hand. Yeah, your video is frozen at this time.
Is there
You're all.
How is it now? Okay.
Oh, all right. We just.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now, Danny, say something.
Yes?
Now.
Okay or not okay? That's not audio. No.
Can you
1, 2, 3, 4,
disconnect your
4, 5.
microphone and then reconnect it, please?
Yeah? Okay? All right.
Yay.
Whoa!
Oh, here we go.
Hey.
Now, the coin picture at Shuhara is very interesting.
Okay.
Before I start what I want to say, I will present you with the data. In fact, contrary to what is said, none of the loci are sealed. So in fact, we have coins from all over. All the loci contain coins from what we think was the first phase and the second phase. So the only way I can work around this is considering the coins as a whole, the entire coins from the site. And there were 23 coins from the excavations, a hoard of silver coins which was found at the site a few years earlier, but are from the site, and 5 additional Hasmonean coins which are kept in the Sat HaKibbutz collection. And the way I see things, if you can look at my diagram here, we have several coins. We have 8 Seleucid coins, 8, 9, 10, 11 Seleucid coins, and the hoard. The closing date of the hoard is 140-39 BC, and because the last coin is in nearly mint condition. Are you following me? Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay. Because the latest coin is in, Sylvie cannot hear me. Sylvie cannot hear me. What shall I do? I'm at the top of the volume.
You undid it before.
Can you adjust something over there with my mic?
You undo what you had done.
Sylvie, can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay, Sylvie can hear me now. Okay, very good. So if we are talking about 2 events of destruction at a site, I would put the first one very close to the date of the latest coin because it's in nearly mint condition. There is not much doubt that we are talking about an emergency hoard, which was buried in anticipation of a violent event. And if we look at the years that we talk about, probably it involves the infighting of the Seleucid claimers to the throne at the time, and there were no less than 3 of them in these years. So if you take the dates and the fact that this is a very good time because of the political and military situation, we can claim that the first destruction of that happened sometime around 139, 138 BC. Unfortunately, we cannot bring Jonathan the Hasmonean into this because he's supposed to have been killed about 4 years earlier in 142. So I'm sorry about that. We cannot put him into the game here. If we look at the phase 2 now, we have 3 datable coins very close to each other. 3 datable coins from within 12 years of each other, and all of them about 25, 30 years after the first event. I suggest the settlement was renewed at this time, and the next slide will show you what I mean. We have in the Galilee very many documented sites where there was the replacement of the local ethnic population by a Jewish ethnic element. And if we go to the next slide, you will see what happens at Gamla. Exactly the same picture. We have Seleucid presence very high. These years are the years in question. During this very short period, we have an enormous quantity of Tyrian coins arriving. But as soon as we start getting Hasmonean coins, all the other coins disappear. And if I go back to Shuhara, you can see that after, in phase 2, we have only 3 coins which are not Hasmonean in comparison with 14 Hasmonean coins. And the silver coin, it doesn't really count because there was no Jewish alternative to the silver. So we have now what I believe is a Hasmonean settlement of people who came to an empty place and inhabited it. And in fact, my view on the so-called Hasmonean annexation is that it was a slow process of Judeans coming up north, settling in abandoned settlements and maybe taking some by force. But the actual annexation was not a formal one. It just happened because the population, the Hasmonean population in Galilee increased enough, so it almost automatically became part of the Hasmonean state. If we go one step further, I think that we have five coins of John Hyrcanus. We don't know exactly when he started minting. Maybe in 125, that's why I have a dotted line here. But all 5 coins are the same lifetime. So to claim that they did not arrive in his lifetime would be statistically probably impossible. So in fact, we have a very high ratio of Hyrcanus coins to Janneus coins, and I propose, just as I did at Gamla, that the beginning of the Hasmonean settlement was sometimes in the last years of the 2nd century BC, which fits with Gamla and, in my opinion, fits with other places too. Now, what happened in the second destruction? We have 14 Hasmonean coins, a third of all coins found, and I claim that they cannot have been lost by either fighting soldiers or a temporary garrison. Besides the joke that I wrote down here, I don't quite see, contrary to the opinion of my friend here, that a garrison would be placed in such a God-forsaken little one-horse town in the middle of nowhere. So I think what really happened is that the Hasmoneans who lived there at the time were kicked out by the local Hellenistic population, and you all know what is meant by this quote from Josephus. First one to say what settlement I mean will get a prize. So that's Kedesh. I don't claim, of course, that Kedesh is literally responsible, but we know that this part of Galilee, this area, did not become part of the Hasmonean state. So my contention is that the second destruction of the site and its final abandonment was the destruction of the Hasmoneans who lived there by the local Hellenistic population, and that's what caused the second destruction. When did it happen? It's hard to say with any accuracy. We have one coin of Janneus, which is of the late type, minted not before 80 BC. And since there are no coins after Yanai, I would say that the second destruction and the end of the settlement came sometime between 90 and 76, maybe a few years later, but not by very much. I rest my case.
So are we going for discussion, or I'm going to respond?
All right. So I think
My response? Okay.
okay.
That's a great to be over 2 squares. But we agree on some points. We agree that the site was a Hellenistic, local, native, pagan site, which was taken by the Hasmoneans. And we do agree it happened sometimes in the very late second century BC. But the question, what happened exactly there, again, from 2 squares, is hard to say. If Jews separate, we don't have a new layer of settlement. We do have some coins. And I do think that this part of Galilee was under Hasmonean rules, because that's what clearly comes from the Khan-Naphtali fortress. There is a Hasmonean garrison there that needed a mikveh, and that this garrison is mentioned later on until 38, when it is mentioned in Josephus that his forces were fighting against local garrisons or Hasmonean garrisons. That's probably this area was under Hasmonean control, this place was probably abandoned if there was some garrison after the conquest, and if some of these soldiers, this unit, stayed there. That could be the reason for the few coins that were found, the late coins that were found there. And of course, to understand it better, what we need is a few more squares excavated there to get some more information about the very last phase of the settlement at Shuhara. And we have to remember that this is, in any case, it is a small rural site. It would be better to dig nearby town, but that of course belongs to the Hezbollah, and we're not going to do it.
Okay, final remark. First of all, our profession is speculating, as you know, and we like it very much. That's what we like to do. So no one will ever know the truth. But actually, if you look at it, Keren Naftali, between Keren Naftali and Shuhara, we have Kadesh, and Kadesh never became Hasmonean. And we are, in fact, in the hinterland of Kadesh. So I think Shuhara was a short-lived Hasmonean experiment which did not succeed. And in fact, most of the very top upper Galilee, as far as I know, there's hardly any Hasmonean, or at all, any Hasmonean presence. So I still say that Shuhara was not in Hasmonean territory. Okay.
Wait, final. It's a good question why Kadesh was not inhabited by Jews and by Hasmoneans. That's an interesting question, of course. I can just speculate very much and suggest that maybe the name and the question of holiness that came from the pagan world was not, myself, was a reason not to separate, although it is a fell with a nearby spring. But I do think that the entire area was under Hasmonean control, but again, we don't have enough proofs now.
So,
Yep.
Moti and
Just
Danny,
barely.
can you hear me? Just barely. So, let me see if I can summarize some of the key facts and points of disagreement, and then we will have some questions and discussion. Sylvie and Gerald and Cattell and David and Roy, you all might have questions. So we have two sites, one to the west of Kadesh, one to the east of Kadesh. Shuhara has two phases. Well, there's a Persian period as well, but there is a phase that's associated with the Horde, a small farmstead, abandoned probably around 139, 138, so it can't have anything to do with Jonathan. And there is a reoccupation there, and the reoccupation has as its latest coins that of Yanai. And there is an ash level. The ash level is what this second is what destroys this second phase. And there are no weapons associated with the second phase. The few arrowheads come from the first phase. Is all that?
No, the arrowheads come from the second phase.
Oh, the arrowheads come from the second phase. Okay. And then we have Kara Naphtali, and we also have two phases. We do not have dating evidence for the abandonment or specific conversion of the fortress, but we know that it was converted by people who used mikvaot, so Jews. And we also don't have I don't remember presenting coin evidence, dating evidence, specifically from Keren Naphtali. We have pottery, which is generally later second century. And we even have that one Shaheen folded oil lamp, which one might suppose is connected with Hasmoneans. But we don't have, do we have any coins from Keren Naphtali?
Yes, Danny also analyzed the coins, but they did not come from good layers. They came from the site, and there are Hellenistic, Seleucid and Hasmonean coins. So we have Hasmonean coins, but they don't come from a very good position. But we do have them.
And then, so now the larger conversation that we want to engage in is who lived where, when, and who destroyed, if there was deliberate destruction of some places at which times. That is, we have these facts and there are various scenarios they could be connected with.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Ash layer is not enough to prove its violence, and even two arrowheads in this layer not necessarily says that people were fighting them. But there were soldiers there. I don't think it has to do with something with hunting. But that's the evidence, and we play with them because we try to understand this specific point in history where there is a change. And in fact, the mikveh at Keren Naphtali is very clear. It's really one of the best proofs for the ethnic or religious change that happened in the Galilee.
Yes, absolutely. The mikveh is very crucial, and that leads me to one last point I want to make, and then I will open for a conversation, and that is the connection between these sites and phases and the final squatter occupation at Kadesh inside the building, because that has some things in common with both of these, but some things that are unusual. So that is, Gerald knows well, and Danny also from the stamped amphora handles and the coins, must be in the 120s, so earlier than the final occupation of Shuhara. The pottery is of Judean and Lower Galilean types, so that would suggest Jews or Hasmoneans. But even though it's the 120s and we should have coins of Hyrcanus, all the coins are Seleucid, and we have a lot of them. In fact, it's the phase with more coins than any other. It's very odd. And there are no Hasmonean coins at all. So there's pottery that is similar to Lower Galilee, coins that are coastal, including fine and pottery including fineware and a couple amphoras. And that occupation is quite short. And the other site that I want to remind you of that's also in this mix, because it's also apparently not Jewish, is Tel Anafah, which is down in the Hula, so right below, not exactly below, but not so far away from Keren Naphtali. And Tel Anafah and the second phase of Keren Naphtali are contemporary. And Tel Anafah is certainly Phoenician. That makes me wonder about the idea of a Hasmonean garrison. I mean, I'm willing to believe it's Hasmoneans at Keren Naphtali, but I don't understand how it could be a garrison when it's in between Tel Anafah and the route back to Tyre.
The only answer I can give is that there should be somewhere a borderline. Okay? There is a borderline somewhere, but it's not a border between Israel and Hezbollah. Okay, there's not wires and the minefields. But I think that
without any problem, the fortress with the Multian garrison could live a few miles, 3-4 miles south of the settlement at Anafah, which is not military. Those are, of course, just regular citizens.
Sylvie, Gerald, Cattell, Roy, you have something to say? Okay, so you have to unmute your mic. Sylvie, are you talking? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that one issue that might be relevant to the discussion here is how we want to define a state at this time, because I have the impression that the notion of state is used here in a very modern way. And an ancient state didn't need to be territorially continuous, and not all the population, ethnic population, for one side, on the other side, not all the ethnic population needed to be under the state of the corresponding state. I mean, you could have a Judean settlement which wouldn't be under the control of the Judean state, but I think that the real question is, what do we understand by being under the control of the state? So you can have, in the same region, you can have various settlements of various ethnic populations, and each village, paying taxes to its own gods, either in Tyre or in Jerusalem, to put it that way, and living side by side, and or not paying taxes at all. That's also an option that we need to think about. And so the notion of state here is, okay, needs to be updated.
Yeah, that's a good point. Gerald, hold on. Cattell had her. Cattell, you need to unmute your mic.
Yeah, I really agree. My mic is not on.
No, you're good.
You don't hear me?
Good, good.
Yeah.
I fully agree with Sylvie. So I fully agree with Sylvie. I had a question concerning the dating of the mikveh. Do we have elements to date the mikveh?
Yes.
What has been identified as a mikveh?
Of course.
Precisely, I mean.
The mikveh was cancelled, filled up in somewhere around the 30s of the first century BC. Filled up and
109.
out of use.
Could you
So it's earlier.
please return to the slide with the mikveh?
Cattell, did that answer your question? Could you hear?
Andrea, could you repeat,
Yeah.
please? I didn't
Yes.
hear well.
You hear me now? Yes. Okay, I'll try again.
Andrea, could you repeat, please? Because we hear Andrea very well.
Yeah.
Okay. What I said is,
Okay.
we know exactly when the mikveh get out of use, and this was around the 30s, the beginning of the 30s of first century BC.
For the
So
mikveh,
it was built earlier. How earlier? I cannot tell.
as I could see,
Installed into the
typical
ruins
mikveh,
of the fortress.
and
so it is between the
the
end of
my
the fortress
question is why
the first years of the 30th century.
the attributed
Of the first century
to
BC.
ritual bath,
Cattell, could you hear that?
why
Should I
can't
repeat
it be just bath?
The answer was,
Why do we
you know clearly when it went
interpret
out
it as
of use. It went out of use.
mikveh?
in the
I remember that there
so
was
early Herodian
a
period.
similar
And it
construction
post-dates
in
the
Gamla,
fortress. Of course, that's about,
but
I don't know, 100 years. And we don't know
it
when in
definitely
that
not
100 years exactly
not
it is inserted into the fortress.
a typical mikveh
So,
that we have in Jerusalem,
That's as good as we can get.
in other places,
David, I
from
see
the
your hand is up, and Gerald has
first
his hand up, so maybe Gerald, we
century before
turn
Common
to you, and then we
Era and forward.
to you, David.
Okay, hello everybody. Danny and Moti, considering that I understand 1 every 50 words of what you say, I will ask you to answer by yes or no to my questions. The first one is to Moti. Do you have clear evidence that the mikveh was inserted in something which was already built?
Yes.
Now, Danny, it was very hard for me to follow, but the first conquest or destruction or whatever, could it be in the early years of John Hyrcanus?
I don't think so. The last year of the horde is much too early for that.
When is dated the first mint of Hyrcanus?
Sorry?
When is dated the first mint of John Hyrcanus?
We have no idea. It cannot have been before 129. I usually use 125 as the beginning date, but without any real evidence.
Thank you.
Okay, so David has a question. David has had his hand raised, and then Sylvie will come back to you. David.
Sorry, we have to ask the Brian to put up the presentation of Moti.
Brian, put Moti's presentation back up so that we can get to the slide. Go on.
First of all, this is very typical mikveh, and you can see here that there is
Please repeat the answer.
Okay, we have one large step, one narrow step. One large step,
I couldn't hear.
one large step. Very typical to mikvahot in Jerusalem and other places, including these of the Hasmonean palaces in Jericho. And that's very, very clear. Here is also a chance to show you how we have evidence that this was a second use of a room. This wall here is the original wall of the Hellenistic room, and this is the wall of the mikveh. Again, original wall and wall of the mikveh. Again, original wall and the wall of the mikveh. It's very clear that it was installed into an existing room. And it is a mikveh because it can be nothing else. Okay, it's not a system because it's too small, and it's not a bathtub because it's too big.
Oh, David, Moti says that it's extremely typical. The construction is typical. The way that the steps are made so that there is one wide and one narrow step alternating is typical of mikvahot in Jerusalem. Actually, that's an interesting point, Moti, I just want to say. Danny, I don't remember that at Gamla.
No.
I don't think the steps are like that in the Gamla mikvahot.
No, but one of the mikvahot at Gamla has one wider step than the others, and that sort of ties in with one of the halachot, that you have to have a wide step to stand
safely and feel
So in
safe when you emerge.
Jerusalem,
Oh, all right. And the
in
other,
Jerusalem, usually when we have a mikveh, the steps are spanned over the entire side of the mikveh, and also the broad step, it
I think there was no actual rule of how exactly to build steps.
No.
In Jerusalem, they had one way of doing
Here they
it.
could
In Jerusalem,
see there is one
sort of separation, divisions on the steps.
and one narrow
And
step.
in Jerusalem, most of them were cut in the rock. In Galilee, most of them are not cut in rock. They are built. So there is a difference, a regional difference, but no halachic difference. Besides, what else can it be? Any idea?
were you able to?
The most important part is that if you look at the final report of Ehud Netzer, the palace, the Hasmonean palaces, you'll see one that looks exactly like this one.
David, did you hear that, and did that answer your that it's also, this is also like the ones in the Hasmonean palaces in Jericho. And the other thing, and David, the other point that Moti made in answer to your question is that this is definitely inserted into an earlier room. That is, there are earlier walls and they were cut through to insert this mikvah. It's not de novo. Sylvie, you had a question.
Yes, I had a question about the possible gap or not between the levels of distraction, especially talking about Khirbet esh-Shuhara, and the time of reoccupation, second phase of occupation of the site. Is there a gap between the distraction and the reoccupation or not?
According to archaeology, I cannot point to a gap. I see two very clear layers in which floors were changed, and the place of the pillars, the base for the pillars was changed. It is very clear that there was a change, but I have no evidence for gap. This gap could be a year, or 10 years, or 25 years, but I have nothing in hand to declare that there is a gap.
What I can... You didn't hear, Sylvie? Sylvie, you did not hear?
No, could Andrea repeat, please?
Yeah, so I will say what Moti said, and then I think Danny will have something else to say in response. All right, so Moti said, it's clear that there are two phases, especially because, I mean, not only stratigraphically, but there's a column, one or more column bases, now I'm not sure I heard exactly, that are realigned or moved. So it's clear that it's a different occupation and there's a gap, but as to the length of time in between, there's no way Moti says he can tell. It could be 5 or 10 years, it could be 25 years. On the basis of the stratigraphy, not much time. Moti, is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, now Dan, maybe you have something to say about that from the coins.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Sylvie? Sylvie, can you hear me?
I can
Okay.
hear. The problem is to understand.
Okay, Andrea will translate to you, please. This is a little bit like what came first, the chicken or the egg, because I get the coins and I get a report from Moti that he had two destruction layers. So when I look at the coins, I'm trying to fit them to that story. If I did not have that, I would say there is a gap in the coinage which I cannot explain. but because there are two destruction layers, I can easily fit the coin picture into those phases. And if I am correct, I can say that one ended around 138 and the second started around 110 or 105 BC. Why? Because I have three coins with very close dates, and that is significant. I have three coins separated by only 11 years, and I think that is significant to tell me when the second phase probably began.
Sylvie, did you hear that?
More or less.
No.
I say briefly.
More or less than more.
More less than more. I'll say briefly what Danny said. If he wouldn't have had the stratigraphic evidence from Moti showing that there were two discrete occupation phases, he would have been perplexed by the profile of the coins, because the coins have a gap that would have been hard to explain. But in tandem with the stratigraphy, the coin profile can make sense. There is an earlier phase with coins that comes down to around 139 and boom, it stops. And that phase stratigraphically is destroyed. There's ash over that. And then the second phase begins around 110. And the coin profile of both of these groups are close together. They clump together in a continuous way with this gap in between. So it makes sense to say, on the basis of the coin evidence, that the gap is quite significant. One phase ending around 139 and the other starting around 110. Shiral.
Yes, okay. I like it to a certain extent. When I asked Danny if it could be coins of the early years of Hyrcanus, it's because we have a problem from the moment Antiochus VII died. We don't know. We have the text of Josephus that say that Hyrcanus, on his way back from Far East, attacked some cities, I don't remember the names, and then we have no exact date of destruction or conquest of Hyrcanus before 111. So now, if there is a difference between this difference between close, I don't understand, I don't remember. Antiochus VII died in 137, right?
He died in 129.
Right, 129. 129.
Antiochus VII?
Antiochus VII dies in 129 in conjunction with the Parthian, something to do with.
Yeah, right. Okay. So when Hyrcanus was who had to go with him to help him, then he comes back, and the problem is we don't know exactly what he did. We have names of cities, but they are not clearly understood. It was somewhere in Jordan, and I was wondering, but now things are less clear. And I don't think the coin anyway of Hyrcanus that you found can help, because I'm not sure he minted before exactly when he became king in 135. So there is something there which I'm too confused now to really sort. But do you think that there would be something like that? That Hyrcanus somehow would have been involved?
I'm not sure I understand what you ask.
The first destruction.
The first destruction? Well,
Yeah, so the question, Danny, the question
even before Hyrcanus started ruling. It's before 135, or maybe around 135. I doubt that in 135 he would have gone up to the Galilee to fight.
Yeah.
No, it comes, no, but you say that the last coin of the first phase is 139.
Okay.
Okay? Mhm. And the coin of the Ekanus was in the first or second phase?
Second phase.
That's technical. Okay, anyway, what about the 110? From where is the coin dated in 110?
It's from Akko. Around 110. No one can date it precisely. They can give a few years.
Just one thing I want to add. The question, the reason why I asked if the mikveh was inserted in an existing building is because we have this, it's something that has to be checked in Maresha. The only problem is in Maresha, there are obviously already Herodian, because they are with steps which are on all along one of the sides of the mikveh. As here, it's obvious that this is Hasmonean simply because the parallel we have is in Jericho, as you said, and especially it's striking when you look at the two mikvaot of the twin palaces. They are organized, and each one has his mikveh, and the steps are on the side. And I don't know about later mikvaot, let's say the beginning of Herod and later, that have this peculiarity. And what about the volume, by the way? What about the capacity of the mikveh? Did you measure it?
It's very big. It's very big. It's almost the size of the oval mikveh at Gamla.
It's much more than the minimum required by the halakha.
Okay.
Sylvie.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the issue of gap between the context and distraction and reoccupation. That's a question to Moti. Moti, if we leave the text aside, given that there is a gap between the distraction, the first phase, the first distraction, and the Judean reoccupation of the site in Khirbet esh-Shuhara, what is the archaeological evidence supporting your statement, your claim that the site was destroyed by the Hasmoneans?
First of all, I said that destroyed is not something that we can be sure. We have ash layer and 2 arrowheads. That's what we have. The reason that I think is made by the Hasmoneans is because there were Hasmonean coins. That's the only reason. Now, I don't have any third layer on which the Hasmonean lived. I don't have it. Again, it's only 2 squares. Maybe in the other 5 meters away we'll find the place where these people live. But in what Hasmonean coins came from the top, the upper destruction layer, the ash layer. That's what I have in hand. And that we should analyze, and we like to give some answers. That's all.
Andrea, please, could you repeat?
I'm not sure I got most of that, but Moti says that the connection with the Hasmoneans is simply and only because of the Hasmonean coins that were found in the upper layer. That's it.
And the mikveh.
In the upper layer, meaning the phase of reoccupation, or, I mean, what is the connection between the destruction, the layer of destruction and the phase of reoccupation?
I will try to.
Do you have Hasmonean coins in the layer, linked to the layer of destruction?
Yes. When we have in archaeology, we have a floor, and on the floor there is a layer of ash. In this layer of ash, we have coins. That's what we have. and we have to build a story.
And with the same evidence, I can build a different story, because usually on the floor you find the coins of the inhabitants and not of the soldiers who come to take the place.
Yeah.
But it's also possible.
Okay.
I have a question. Where did you find the coins of 38 BC? In a layer, above a layer, or outside the building? Where was it?
You mix the two sites. The 38, the date of 38 comes from the suggestion when the mikveh was abandoned. That's Keren Naphtali. Nothing to do with Shuhara. At Keren Naphtali we have a mikveh filled up with ash, bones and pottery, which are dated to the let's say the beginning of the 30s of the 1st century BC, and there I connected with Josephus' story about the activity of Herod in 38. So the date 38 is not from archaeology but from history.
Ah, aha. This is the time of the war against, well, actually it's the end of it, of the war against Matityahu. It's even after. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Moti and Danny. And my question is, what is your best guess for the relationship of the squatter occupation at Kadesh in the 120s with pottery of the Lower Galilee and no Hasmonean coins at all, and everything that looks just like the later occupation at Khirbet esh-Shuhara. The pottery is like the same at Khirbet esh-Shuhara. They have tanurs that are the same sort of tanurs, etc., etc. What is your explanation for that occupation vis-a-vis Keren Naphtali and Khirbet esh-Shuhara?
First of all, I have to say that not always I have answers.
That's fair.
That's important to say. Second, I have a solution, and that's to ask Danny to give you some Hasmonean coins and to put them in place.
Well, maybe it indicates that in Kadesh there were real paupers. They didn't have a penny.
But they had many coins. There are something like 50 coins, but they're all issues of Tyre and Akko and Seleucid imperials.
I think that I don't have a good answer, and I think that as Silva said at the very beginning, although it is a Hasmonean state, and the question is of course what is a state in the 2nd century BC, and we do know that Hasmoneans fought against the pagan population of the land of Israel as almost as a jihad. There is some possibility that local people still continue to live there or came back to live there as squatters with not any Jewish or Judaic identity. It could be. There's no problem. I live with it.
Danny, what do you
Andrea,
think?
could you repeat the answer?
Repeat, yeah.
Moti says basically he doesn't know.
I said that I can live without a good answer.
He can, he can live without a good answer. He can live without an answer at all.
For the next generation to solve.
That is not fair. I have to publish that stuff. Come on, you guys. Danny, how do you explain the coin profile of the squatter occupation at Kedah?
Sorry, how do I explain what?
The coin profile.
I don't. I don't. Well, there's several speculations I could come up with, but neither would be any better than the other. So I'd rather not speculate. You know what they say? Maybe if you dig more, you'll find a Hasmonean coin, which is what actually happened at Tisha. For many years, they didn't have any, and I told them, if you keep digging, you'll find one, and eventually they did. Go back and dig.
Thanks. That's not a lot of help. But so one thing I want to say about that is that methodologically, it calls into question our surety about some of these other explanations. That is to say, if we have something that combines some of one and some of the other, and it's impossible to position culturally or politically or ethnically, it might make us wonder about the labels that we give elsewhere.
Not necessarily, to my opinion, not necessarily. I think we can have most of the explanations that we are using and have some remains or some sites or some phases where we cannot explain.
What
I
I can offer here may be something to connect with what Sylvie said about the states. If we are on a boundary, inevitably things sort of move from side to side. So I can imagine a scenario of pagan population at Kedesh buying cooking pots from their Jewish neighbors, wherever. So that's something you can live with.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. There isn't any doubt we're on edge of various constituencies. That's for sure. And also, as Sylvie pointed out early on, what exactly these constituencies are, how they were constituted, and how they interacted with one another, this is also not clear, or anyway in flux. Maybe then also, not just in our own minds. So in a way, this could be evidence of that instability in precise definition. Roy, do you have something
Do
to
we
say?
have something?
Yeah, I would like to ask both Moti and Danny, what do you think about Gush Chalav in this context?
Let's say that we don't have, I think we don't have yet in hand something very specific, hardcore remains answer. Okay, excavation. I can't recall to any of the excavations of Moshe Altal that can give us more information about this period of time. Let's say the end of the 2nd century, it came from Gush Chalav. I have the feeling, according to the sparse finds that we have in hand, that the situation is very similar.
What I can add numismatically, that we have huge amounts of Hasmonean coins at Gush Chalav, including 18 of Hyrcanos I. And if I am correct in my theories, that's a very large proportion of Hasmonean coins. So here again, I might suggest that Hasmonean settlement started there sometime late in the reign of Hyrcanos, but nothing beyond that.
Okay.
I'd ask Roy, did something new came from your work in Upper Galilee that could add a little bit to the situation?
I have several sherds from Gush Chalav, from the upper hill, which Andrea looked, and it looks like what she calls the Judean, the household Judean. So I don't know if this is the Hasmonean ceramics or whatever. And I also examined some of the excavations, and Moshe Artal has one excavation that might be related to this context with the late Hellenistic cistern that was later buried below the early Roman fortification. So this also might have to be something in this context.
Sure, but the only problem is that the first century fortification is 66. And what we are looking for is the 110, 180 BC. So it's
yeah.
But someday it will come. Gush Halav is not. Someday it will come.
Yeah.
You would have to raise half of the houses of Gush Halav to find this.
Katel, Sylvie, Gerald, David, any more questions for Moti and Danny? Gerald.
When you spoke about the squatters, you spoke about the coins, but what about the pottery? What is it?
The pottery of the squatter says at Kaddish?
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, the pottery of the squatter phase at Kadesh is just like Roy's at Gush Halav, and it's just like the second phase at Khirbet esh-Shuhara. It is lower Galilee forms and fabrics.
So it's local.
It's local, and it's a different kind of local than everything that's come before.
Ah.
And yeah, it's different. And it would be worth, I don't actually remember seeing now, I guess I probably did at the time, but I don't remember seeing the pottery from Keren Naphtali. I guess because I visited when Moti you were digging, and I think it was all dirty and in buckets, and I didn't see it once it was cleaned up. But it would be worth looking to see that material, although I think it's about 20 years later, but still, it probably is similar.
So, squatter
yeah.
may be the right term to follow you on the fact that there is a big turmoil in this area due to fight to conquer territories and not states. Even the locals maybe were also interested in being somewhere at a certain time when nobody was there, no Tyrian and no Seleucid army and no Hasmonean. So this really has the taste of small guerrilla in the frame of an attempt to conquer territory from the Hasmonean from the south and the Tyrians to keep the territory that they had, as we know, in Kadesh and probably with the territory around. So that's why it's very difficult to really understand. When were things fixed, you know, as far as this time states, but it was certainly not at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, when we think about the brown bag conversations that we've had all this year on Ika and on Mazor, and now here on this string of sites along the northern border, both the ancient and the modern border, this last group is the one where everything remains in flux for a long time, relatively speaking. That is, Ika is destroyed and it's abandoned, and that's it. Mazor, the same. And then the eventual reoccupation there is uncontested, and it's quite clear what the date is. Those are very clear points. So the Shvela and the Lower Galilee are not areas of contention, but this stretch of the eastern Upper Galilee is very much in contention. And one thing that we might conclude is that it stayed in play for a long time. So, because, for example, Keren Naphtali remains occupied for the exact same time period as Tel Anafah. Tel Anafah is abandoned around 75, 80, 75, something like that. And so, and that is to the east of Keren Naphtali. So, where things solidify is in the Lower Galilee, but in the Upper Galilee, it's more, it looks, anyway, to me, a little more like what Danny said earlier about there is a gradual process and various people are engaged in moving in and trying to establish themselves, but nobody really holds on to the exclusion of somebody else for quite a while. Sylvie.
Again, I think that if we remove the notion of state from this picture, it would be much easier to understand. We could just think of groups of people and different ethnic groups of people trying to occupy a site and having nothing to do with the central authorities either in Tyre or in Jerusalem. And the authorities in Tyre and Jerusalem just opportunistically following what is going on the field, probably with delay. So again, I think it would be wrong to think in terms of the central state initiative, and it might be more helpful to think of just villagers fighting against each other, and actually it would fit the picture that comes from the quote from Josephus that was quoted earlier by Moti or Danny, I don't remember.
I'd like to answer this. I think you have to take into consideration that when phase 2 in Shuhara starts, we are at one of the lowest points of the Seleucid state. If the Seleucid state were strong, no one of these wandering people could have walked up from Judea and find an empty spot and, hey, let's settle down. So the political situation was very much at the right point in time to do this kind of thing, to walk out of Judea for people who had no land and just look for an empty place to settle down. It could not have happened 10 or 20 years earlier because Antiochus VII was a strong king, Demetrius II was a strong king. After 125, there was no central Seleucid authority, so these things could happen much easier.
I would like to add that we cannot take the state out of the game. We speak here about a dynasty as strong as it will be, or as not strong as it will be. That means coins. We speak here about an identity that has military forces. We speak here, at least in my opinion, a group of people that have soldiers sitting in a fortress just a mile away from Kedesh, or 3 miles away from Shuhara. So we cannot take the state out of the game. We cannot say that just wandering people here and there. And I think that the Hasmonean dynasty had an initiation to build a state and to bring Jews to settle there. And that's how it comes together with the squatters in Kedesh. As I said earlier, it's on the border, and that's the place where we meet, a fortress with Hasmonean soldiers and a authors at that could happen on the Buddhism.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to answer to what I guess I understood from what is answered, not from what is said. So if I misrespond, I'm sorry. Actually, my observation was based on recent studies on both the Persian Empire and the Hellenistic Empire, and perhaps also the Roman Empire. I mean, the current studies on pre-industrial empires have grown very skeptical of the notion that even a strong empire, a strong king, controls every corner of territory. So thinking that, of course they control the towns and the big cities, but whether Antiochus VII controlled every corner of his territory wasn't the definition of a strong king.
Okay, that's...
I mean, it can be a strong king, but he not control every region in a very tight way.
Right. And I might say, as an addendum to that point, that this very important, fascinating evidence that Moti and Danny have presented us with is itself primary data to better understand this exact point. That is to say, how did these rulers in this time understand their own realm and their own ability, and how did they decide how to instantiate their authority? The way that everything here is in flux suggests exactly as you say, but this is the evidence for it. Yuval, did you?
Well, this is, I think it's simple. It's trade. It's economy. All these small places had to earn something, and they were not necessarily related to the central power or the representative, but they were linked to either bigger villages or even cities. So I think the control is not that it doesn't have to be with the soldiers or something like that, but it's simply because for making a living, if you are a craftsman or a peasant, you will work, and eventually your products, if it's not in autarcy, will have to be bought by someone which has the money, because it's from a stronger settlement. I cannot imagine that there was a policeman in each settlement, or it's the same today actually. Even in a modern city, you have villages. You have to go to the city or to the biggest village, either to sell what he produces, or to pay taxes or whatever. So it's not the political state; it's rather the economic and the trade system that holds the territory together under a given central power.
Although I'm not sure that this is a region at this time where there's so much excess production. I mean, Shuhara and Kara Naphtali, and these are, and the squatters at Kadesh, they are just making do. They're not, I don't think they are part of a larger economic network.
I just want to add another thing to the discussion which was not there yet. And that's, of course, the fact that it is different from the Roman Empire or from the Seleucid Empire. Here is an issue of religion.
Yeah.
The Hasmonean state and the conquest of the Hasmoneans was mixed with religious issues. And that just came to my mind again, because now there is a new publication from the excavations at Akko, the courthouse, and Danny's part on the coins, there are no Hasmonean coins in Akko at this point from these excavations. And that means something. The people at Akko avoided using Hasmonean coins. Okay, that's has to do with this.
Yes, and they avoided.
Actually, you brought a bad example because Akko is a cosmopolitan city, so we do have here and there a Hasmonean coin.
Yeah, but in the district
Didn't have one, but we have. But on the whole, of course, you are right. Non-Jews had no interest in the Hasmonean coins, period.
But that's not a religious issue.
Cattell, do you have something to say?
But that's not
Say
a
again?
religious issue precisely. Side. Or perhaps I would put it differently, saying that the coin maybe an ethnic marker and maybe a matter of self-description. So on this point I disagree with Cattell, but again, they don't necessarily mean self-control. There could be an ethnic marker, but the choice of the coin you use is a local decision. So it's a self-description. It's maybe a self-description. At least it's worth considering. I think this is an issue that needs to be considered in a more open way.
Okay, I'll give you a food for thought here. If we look at Hasmonean coins, the Jews prefer them over other coins because of religious reasons. But the others did not like them not because of religious reasons, but because they were completely different from the coins they were used to, which always had the head of the ruler on it. And these stupid coins didn't have anything but inscriptions and flowers.
or Greek inscription of the Basileus Alexander.
No?
Andrea, could you please
David
repeat?
doesn't agree.
No, I didn't pick any word of what you said.
Okay.
Danny, I think Danny said that another point is how people would have regarded these coins because they were different modules with different legends. Yeah.
But again, the question is, does it mean
Andrea, are you going to explain that? So, shall I repeat what I said?
Okay.
No, no, no.
Okay.
I didn't
What I said
understand.
is you look at
I didn't understand what Danny said. So, Andrea, could you please repeat?
So I think that what Danny said is that the issue is in part that these respective populations would not have trusted necessarily the coins of the other because they were different modules with different legends and different scripts and different, everything about them was different, so they would not have been so inclined to regard them with trust. Danny, is that more or less correct?
That's one side. The other side is why the Hasmoneans, because of religious reasons. So we have religion on one side, and we don't have religion from the other side. Am I clear?
Yeah, Cattell, you have your...
Why don't you consider it political religious rather than purely religious? Why don't you take the politics out here? I don't understand.
I think that it is religious. I think that the entire conquest that the Hasmonean did was based on religion of the Holy Land for them. The land that was promised to them. The best example is the destruction of the Samaritan temple. That's the best religious reason to move north and to demolish the building. The people stayed in place, but their temple was cancelled. That's religious.
Temples were also political and economic issues.
Of course, no doubt. But in this case, it was also for a religious reason, and that's reconquering and reclaiming their land, the land of the Jews.
Cattell, you are used.
Okay, I have a whole book on this issue, so coming out soon, hopefully.
Okay. Just one little remark, Cattell, you are used to the Greeks and the Romans who fought all the time, but never on religious grounds.
No doubt.
Here you have these small group of people for whom religion was one of the main issues of their lives, and quite different from the Quranic world.
There's a connection between religion and space, religion and the actual land. But we'll wait for the book.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there were. I am not saying that there were no religious aspects or no Celtic aspects, or I'm just questioning the fact that it is separated from other aspects.
No doubt. There is nothing which is also 100% religion or
that it's put forward as the main goal of the wars of the Hasmoneans. Like when you spoke about jihad.
Yes.
Like earlier you spoke about jihad, describing the wars of the Hasmoneans as a jihad. I totally disagree.
That's good.
And jihad, if you mean cherem in the Bible, it means you have to exterminate the population, which they did not do it precisely.
I think that deporting the people of Bet Shean is something very similar. You don't have to kill them, or you can just send them out of the Holy Land.
You have evidence for big massacres?
Gerard knows the Bet Shean, what was excavated.
So,
The quarters of Hellenistic Bet Shean is finished after the conquest. There is no settlement there.
Gerald, I see your hand is up, and I'm going to call on you, and then I'm going to call this session done. So you are going to get the last word.
I mean, for me, the last word. To have an idea how what was the extent of the settlement, because we have to speak about some sort of settlement of the Hasmoneans, and now you have to find a synagogue, because if they had the time to build a synagogue, nice enough, of course, it could be in any building, so you can more or less calculate how long they've been there, because to build the mikveh doesn't take so long.
All right, that'll be a subject for Roy's next excavation. He'll locate this someplace up there, and we'll have another brown bag at some point to discuss those finds. So we're going to call this over. Yes, this was great. Thank you very much, everybody. And Moti and Danny, thank you very much for your patience and your good humor and your willingness to help us reacquaint ourselves with these sites and these excavations and these ideas. We have recorded this to the extent that it's understandable, and we'll be posting it, and we'll let you all know when it's up on the website, and we'll look forward to future conversations. Thanks. Bye-bye. Wow. Why was that so bad, do you think?